Jonny Ball, thank you very much. Right, to continue the conversation, try continuing at the start again.
Yeah.
You had your first panic attack
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks.
It was about 6 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, I'd been out with what can only be described as like a girls' day out with the lads.
Yeah.
We'd been out, rooftop terrace by St Paul's, martinis on the terrace. Went out for a nice meal. It wasn't exactly your typical squaddy day out because the lads that I was out with were, either serving or have served.
Yeah.
And so we'd had this lovely, beautiful day out. I was quite knackered because at that time I was still using sticks to get about in my sort of recovery. And I just found myself getting really distant from the group at dinner. The conversation was flowing. I found just really distancing myself away. And it was coming to the point where I needed to go home anyway. So I had about an hour and a half's commute back to home. And I had my first panic attack in an Uber. And all I was worried about at the time was that he's going to think I'm really weird and it's going to affect my Uber rating. And so at the end of it, once I'd realised, I think when I got to St Pancras, that's what had just happened. I think basically in the build up to that amazing day out with the lads, I'd been doing too much. I was about halfway through my CBT therapy, and I had been cramming my days with too much activity. Hadn't been focusing on my recovery. I'd been isolating myself from people in general. Busy. Day out, body, mind went, no, mate. And this panic attack happened.
What happened then, physically?
Physically, my breathing, it was as if someone had got like a seat belt and had yanked it around my chest. I literally could not breathe. I was trying to think about all those breathing techniques that you pick up just to try and get a grip. I was wanting to almost chuck myself out of the cab to get out of that confined space. So fortunately I was familiar with the area, so I was looking out the window. So I had those waypoints knowing that I was almost there and that there was an end. If I hadn't had that, then I probably would have had to get the guy to stop. And the other thing, do you know those Uber pool cars where someone else is in that you share an Uber?
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was a bit cheaper because I'm tight
Right,
ass.
I didn't know about that.
There was a bloke in the cab as well, some random punter. So, but the end of the story was that I then had an hour train journey, and it wasn't that late, but it was a Saturday night, train was packed, and I literally cried for an hour on that train. And I felt really alone, linked to my motorcycle accident, I guess, because that's one of the emotions that I was feeling post injury. And
what, loneliness?
Yeah. And because I got stuck basically under my arm in my motorbike.
Oh shit! Yes. Yeah.
So the sense of loneliness.
You're pinned down. You crashed.
Yeah. So I had a very heavy Harley Davidson on my arm, which that laceration on my left arm, as you can see, was a result of getting my arm stuck. So the fire brigade had to free me. So those kind of emotions of being isolated and lonely were one of the biggest challenges mentally post-recovery. And that's why I was signposted to CBT. So when it came to being on the train, and no one gave a shit. No one came to see me. I was crying, but I just could not believe that no one came to me. So I literally pulled the pin and I went on Facebook. And the Leave No Man Behind Facebook page? It was set up after a veteran suicide, and has actually morphed into something that, yes, looks out for people in their sort of darkest days, but has become a bit of a community looking out for each other. And I posted on there, no one gives a shit. I'm on my own. I'm crying. I'm on a train. I just want to get connected to someone. And do you know what? I had direct messages from strangers, men, women, from those that had served, our muckers, I didn't even know. I also had about 8 people that knew me. I had one of my mates' dads that I grew up with, who's still serving. His dad, who's a veteran, he reached out to me too, and he knows me from the age of 12. So, 18 years later, he's got my back. I'm going to talk about, doing my maths. 18 years. So it was a really weird experience. But you know what? It's probably the best thing that's happened to me in my mental recovery, because I then I told my wife immediately when I got in, because I've become so much more open about things since reaching out for assistance. And I went to my therapist that Friday, and she said, I'm not surprised. One of the tasks that she had set me was doing an activity diary over a 2-week period. And she was just having an assessment about what I was up to, basically. And when you do the activity diary, I mean, I added extra columns, typical kind of, int core background, add extra columns. And you do like an assessment of how you're feeling, your activity levels, your closeness to others, and then you rate them. And looking at that diary, we just sat down and it was crazy. Even if I wasn't recovering, if I was just everyday me, pre-accident, it was way too much. So no wonder my body and my mind said, no, mate. So even though I wouldn't go through the experience of having the panic attack, that kind of the intensity of it, it was probably the best thing that's happened to me in my recovery. Because since then, literally my scores for anxiety, depression, there's a PTSD scale, though I haven't been diagnosed formally with PTSD. They've just gone so much better because my behaviours have changed. It was like a wake-up call.
Well, with those kind of things, you so you mentioned, for example, closest to others, and you lived on it. I've done CBT as well, and you, I mean, slightly different process. I remember at the start of the period through the CBT therapy, you fill out those forms, like activity,
scoring,
how you're feeling, closest to others, lots of different things. But people, they sound really fluffy, right?
Yeah.
And you have that stigmatized. I mean, I know now, mate. It's people listening, blokes listening, or watching, or fucking ladies maybe, and they just hear that phrase, closeness to others, and thinking fucking close, fucking fluffy bollocks. But all these things absolutely have an impact on you, and this is whether you've got a mental injury. I'm staying away from the other term, mental injury, right? Whether you got a mental injury or not, all the little things affect you, whether you think you're 100% or not, right? And the closeness to others is a good example of that. It's like, well, how is that? Why? How is my closest to others going to affect me mentally? Yeah, okay, maybe you can see that. Maybe you can't. You think this is bullshit. But everyone has that time where you go, God, I just want to be on my own. And you go, fuck this. It can't be standing around. I just want to just leave me alone for an hour. Leave me. I just go away for a couple of days, get in the hills, whatever. Leave me alone. Everyone has that. Everyone has that. Leave it alone. So if being away from people helps, okay, at certain different times, absolutely not being around people has a negative effect at the wrong time. So if you haven't got that closest with people, if you're not around the closest, your people you trust, people you love, and as much as you should or could be, then it has an impact. Just like being around people too much has an impact.
Yeah.
Different things at different levels, So,
I mean, I was in a room with loads of my best mates, but I still felt distant. So closest to others is, doesn't necessarily be a physical manifestation. It can just be the embodiment of how close you feel to people. And I certainly was distancing myself. In fact, it was really weird. The other week, I went to a memorial rugby match with my old club, Sharnbrook and Colworth, and they invited me along. A few of the boys serve. And one of the former captains, he'd seen my accident and the kind of post-accident unfold. And he said to me, he goes, mate, he said, you seem so much more open now. He goes, I'll be honest with you, when we first met, in fact, when I got back from Herrick, was the first time I met, started playing for the boys, so I was living in Bedford. And he said, back then you were a little bit distant. He goes, but I've seen you become so much more close to people and so much more open. And this was someone that didn't know me that well, who hadn't seen me for a while. And I just thought, do you know what? I've really started to achieve something with this CBT therapy. It's almost like a life plan. Even if something hadn't happened to me, I'd want to do it because it just completely squares away your business, your relationships, and so many other factors in your life.
You become more aware of the little things that matter.
Yeah.
Closeness to people being the example. You become more aware of the things that have an impact on you. And because you're not forced into it, but through the CBT and through the counselling and through that network around you that's helping you in a time of crisis, right?
Yeah.
Your hand is kind of forced into trying different things out that you would never have tried in the past.
Yeah.
Never have tried in the past.
Yeah.
And an example there, as you said, which is a massive barrier to especially blokes, especially military blokes, addressing any issues they may think they may have, right, is that fear or fear, apprehension of having to be more open emotionally.
Yeah.
It was definitely that for me. To me, it was a big can of worms. I don't want to address like the negative side, because then I'll become more positive and I'll get attached to people, and people don't stay around all forever, and then that'll cause an issue, and that'll upset me, for example, could compromise me emotionally, and then I'm compromised as a human being and I'm not as strong as I could be. It's just that it goes that complex, and you think, but
it's definitely had a knock-on effect.
It's good to talk.
Oh, and
as
my brothers, I've seen my brothers and my dad being so much more open. I've spoken to them like so openly recently, but without any fear of judgment or anything. It just, because we, as a family, we sadly lost our sister for a really horrendous fight with cancer, and I've just seen that they need help too, and hopefully they've seen my openness, that, and I know they have actually, that we just talk so much more as blokes. And the way I look at it is that, I had EMDR therapy in hospital as well from flashbacks. Unfortunately, I didn't get knocked out during my motorcycle accident, but so I remember it all. And the flashbacks I'd experienced in hospital were really weird. So EMDR massively helped out there. But the way I look at it is that, when you get into the gym and you want to go on the old Op Massive, you have to tear muscle for it to repair itself and it becomes stronger. I feel that my mental fitness has been torn through trauma, and that the help that I've seek and the work that I'm doing on myself is actually repairing itself, and I feel more mentally resilient. I wouldn't have chosen it, absolutely not. But do you know what? It's happened. I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to grow. And that's how I feel about the whole situation. All right, still, I've got recovery to come. I've got further operations to come. Long-term prospects about my foot, whether or not it will fit into a shoe, whether or not I'll get back snowboarding, playing rugby, cycling. They're all question marks. But you know what? I'm prepared for that now. Way better than I have been in the past.
Mm-hmm. That openness to talking is an interesting one. I tell you it makes me happy. The last, especially over the last 6, 7, 8 months, sort of since the podcast started picking up in interest, and people have, and I've been, again, because at the same time as really the podcast been going on, that's when I started climbing the hill of my own improvement, should we say. And one of the things I've noticed is when you have a conversation with an ex-colleague, this has happened with myself, so meet up with an ex-colleague, and you sense that they're just not, there's something not right, it's just a bit, to use an old phrase, they're just a bit licked. They just seem a bit licked. But now I look at that and go, instead of thinking, he's like, I'm up with such and such, he's a bit licked. Now I think, well, what's nagging him? Is it, and just you sort of monitor it. But the way I approach that now is, I'll be as open as I normally am now with, when they say, how are you? I'll be completely honest, because every week isn't mega. I'll be like, good couple of days, but fucking hell. I'll highlight the point Tuesday. I was really stressed. Just trying to encourage them into. I'm basically laying down and go, look, I don't give a fuck about talking about this. And as soon as they get over the first hurdle of opening up themselves, when I say open up, that is them just saying something like, I'm having a bit of a shit time at the minute. That is their hurdle. Yeah. That is the hurdle. Just acknowledging you're having a bit of a shit time, regardless of what it could just be work or whatever. But as soon as that first talk or first meeting or whatever's out of the way, man, every other time, it's not like it's a gradual ease into, we're going to get better, we can talk about things more. No, it's like a switch is flicked in those people. And the next time you meet up with them, they are as open as you and I are being now. I've seen it 3 or 4 times in the last year.
There's no way I would have had this conversation with you, and you probably feel the same. And do you know what have I done and pre-injury and during in the sort of 3 weeks in hospital? I was listening to podcasts, because there's so much inspiration and example out there. All right, what I had to cope with though is stop benchmarking my recovery against other people. Like, for example, Cy Harmer, good pal of mine who was immensely supportive in hospital. Dubbing amputee, his story inspired me when I was having to deal with the grief of my sister. I met him through my work at the time when I was doing a project with Blesma, and he's become a really good friend. In fact, when I was in hospital, he was sending me offers of spare legs that had been out to the garage because it was 50-50 about whether or not I'd have to lose my leg. So that, the good old the humour really helped me through that. But it's their example. They're like pathfinders. But it's my own individual recovery. I can't have the same experience. It's different, and you have to kind of work your own way through. It's all very personal, but there's so much inspiration example out there, and you just have to find your own way. What works for you? CBT might not work for everyone that has listened to this podcast. EMDR might not. In fact, yesterday someone on Twitter sent me a message, a female asking about EMDR therapy, and I said just that. Give it a try, work out what's right for you. But it was amazing. A stranger had sent me a message on Twitter. I thought it was mega.
Yeah, it's mega. Yes, and that's the openness brings. It sounds gay as fuck, but that's how I would have thought. But it's not. I mean, it's I don't give a shit anymore. It's like, look, you ask me a question and I answer you honestly. That's it. Yeah. Because if I answer you honestly, I'm just not setting an example. It sounds too grand like that, but just I'm hoping, as you do, that other people will do the same. Because it's not saying that everyone's got an issue. Everyone doesn't have an issue. No. But it's a better way of living. Yeah. Mentally, it's just a better way of living. Yeah. Being honest with yourself, being honest, open, and addressing. Just be more aware of your own mental state in general, And again, one of the other, like you're saying, growing from positive from negative, right? It's one of the things I found. I'm certain you have them. You mentioned CBT and you mentioned the MDR. Is I've been exposed to the tools that are there that can improve you mentally, and I was exposed to them because they were suggesting me to help me. But what I recognise and learn about those tools is those things. I use those now. If I don't a mega day, I use those tools every day. Yeah. Meditation, for example. I try and use them every day because they're just tools to improve yourself. Whether you're at baseline, whether you're below standard, whether you're operating at 200%, they're just extra tools to help you. Just like in physical fitness, extra tools, fartlek training, flipping weights, the squat rack. Yep. TheraBands. It's just. There's physical tools, there's mental tools, and the more you know about it, the more you got in your armoury, and the more awesome human being you become, regardless of your background, regardless of how much pain or trauma you've gone through. It's good because the people exposed to the different kinds of trauma, different kinds of bad, not even just trauma, just shit times. They're also the ones who are aware of those tools and aware of those lessons and can pass them on to other people to help them improve in general.
Exactly.
Here another lesson. Right. PWRR.
Yeah. So when I was a mere sprog at 17, I joined my local infantry regiment, which was the 5th Battalion, the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment. So it was the TA.
Queen's Reg before, wasn't it?
It was Queen's and Royal Hampshires. Yeah. Amalgamated in 1992. Obviously, first Colonel in Chief was Lady Diana. So I was actually on exercise when Lady Diana passed away. So I remember the RSM cutting about on a quad bike, trying to find the CO to deliver the news that Lady Diana had died. But I joined my local TA battalion, and because I was mega keen, I ended up deploying on what was called an S-type engagement back then, which has been superseded by things like full-time reserve service, and obviously mobilisation of reservists. But back then there was no chill well, there was no onboarding. I literally turned up with my kit at Howe Barracks and deployed to Northern Ireland.
So you were TA, then you went S-type, which is basically full-time reserve.
Yeah. I was 18. Yeah. So I turned up at battalion, completely wet behind the ears.
Did you have to do depot?
No, I'd done Catterick, TA Catterick.
What was that?
2 weeks. Yeah, I shit you not. I think I had to do, obviously, what was known as a BFT back then. And I think there was the... whatever the AFT was called back then, the 8 miler basically. I had to do those 2 bits, have a medical, tipped up to Howe Barracks. Because the battalion had already deployed, I then did what was known as NIRT, Northern Ireland Reinforcement Training at Ballykinler. And within a week, or within about 10 days, I think, from literally 18-year-old TA soldier with no experience, I was on the streets of West Belfast. And
you had 2 weeks training though.
2 weeks, yeah, mega, yeah, awesome. But obviously NERT was good, but I was a bright lad. Wasn't particularly fit, so that had to change pretty quick. And when I tipped up to West Belfast to Fort White Rock, I met my Corporal Andy Shaw, who taught me some of the most streetwise abilities that I've learnt the rest of my life. South Londoner, great bloke. I'd love to catch up with Andy at some stage, all these years later. But I think it was my first patrol, night patrol, where... Do you remember the old SA-80 with the magazine release catch that used to go weird? So I'm obviously wearing chest rig.
Go weird?
Well, you'd bang it and the magazine would
because on the left side.
The catch, on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
So we had the chest rig. And I remember we were running along, the four of us, outside a Republican pub, and my magazine fell off. My world came crashing down around me because I was already, behind on the back foot because my skill set. I was a stab. There were only 4 of us, I think, on that tour from the TA. Obviously, fast forward to Herrick, the integration of reservists is fairly normal. So my magazine fell off, rounds fell out, so we had to get the torch out and count them back in. I think on my second patrol, obviously I've got a good debrief of Andy in Anderson Sound Police Station. On my second patrol, opposite Fort White Rock in the Turf Lodge, I got bitten by a dog and had to crack on for the rest of the day. The lads were pretty jealous because I was featured on the NIREP, the Northern Ireland Report, which featured all injuries, so there was a bit of envy at the time. But do you know what? The shit that happened in that first week, I then screwed the nut. I had a great mentor in Andy and the rest of the guys, and I worked really hard, and I had a cracking tour to the point I actually volunteered to then go back to Drumcree for that summer. The battalion came home, and 3 weeks later, we formed up as a composite company and then deployed for 3 weeks, attached to 1 Highlanders, and did the cordon for Portadown. So we were gone from an urban environment to a rural environment, but probably the best bit about it was going up against Civpop, against 1 Highlanders, and it was at the time of the 1998 World Cup when Beckham did that little heel flick against the Argentinians. So we were in a room with the Highlanders watching that, and he got sent off, and it was the end of the World Cup, and the jocks were cheering on the RGs, and so it was just hilarious, and it was an interesting Civpop moment. But I had a really good experience. It was they did offer me to stay on to the battalion. I got an exemplary report, but I was due to go to university. I'd got my place. I hadn't even visited the university, Aberystwyth. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go uni. Cheers, boys.
One of the hardest places to get to, Aberystwyth, unless you cars, right? You ever gone by train?
It's the end of the line, isn't it? Yeah.
If you want to go from Swansea to Aberystwyth, which is, they're not far apart, like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
You have to go out of Wales.
You have to go to Birmingham.
Yeah, it's mental, and then come back in like east, like 150 mile. And come back.
Yeah.
We digress.
Yeah.
So you did. So basically, the island with PWRR.
Yeah. First battalion.
What did you study in uni?
International politics and strategic studies. Basically, is war shit. Yeah.
War stuff. She did international relations.
Yeah, that was like the baseline to it. But everyone on the course, most of my muckers wanted to join the military. There's quite a few. We were in the officers training corps. I mean, I was the kind of guy at the OTC that was on Cambrian patrol. I was mega keen. Any opportunity to do any AT, go on any attachment, that was me. I put my hand up. And in my third year,
but you were in uni. I haven't done a tour.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. So literally, I turned up my first year freshers, squatty haircut, PWRR t-shirt, cutting it about, squatty shuffle. So I soon had to rapidly adjust. There was no sort of transition from a short period of the regular army to uni. Apart from the OTC, that was kind of my transition. But then I had to kind of learn how to be an officer cadet and lead. But loved it, mega keen. third year, disaster. I failed my medical at the regular commissions board because all I wanted to be was an infantry officer. That was all I ever wanted to be in my life. Since the age of 13, cadets, TA, 1 PWRR, uni. And my world came crashing around me because I literally had no plan B. Literally no plan B. So as I waved all my friends off to Sandhurst, this was obviously pre-Telek, pre-Herrick. We graduated in 2001. I waved them off, and then I literally got on a plane and went to Canada for a year, which then started what one of my mates, Ben, refers to as the wilderness years. I literally spent 4.5 years skiing and snowboarding.
Oh, you mentioned this before.
Yeah. But in the summer, I was a holiday rep. Magaluf,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Achieving very little, having good fun and doing it.
Do you know what? It sounds all good fun, but the skills that you learn, so those transferable skills from the military, you don't realise at a time, transferable skills. But the shit I was having to deal with, I had to deal with domestic violence, death, 2 sisters who had beaten each other up and stilettoed each other in their room. There was a child protection issue that I had to respond to on behalf of the company because the FCO rang up and I had to get a child out of a situation. So they were real kind of hard situation. Ski was a bit different clientele compared to Magaluf. So I literally was skiing and snowboarding all day. It was mega. But the skills that you had to learn, it was no, that's not a proper job. It was hard, and I've made some friends for life from that period. It was a real close-knit community, which after all this buggering about travelling, I even did a ski season in Australia. Went out there for a year.
What?
Yeah.
Where's the fucking snow in Australia?
The Snowy Mountains. There's a resort called Thredbo.
Never heard of it.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Where in Australia?
South Australia. It's good little hill. And I saw kangaroos hopping through snow. I shit you not. It was the weirdest experience. But yeah, it comes to a point though when then Afghanistan was happening, and I had this overriding loss of purpose. So after 4.5 years of that lifestyle, I came home, and I was like, "What am I going to do in my life? Can't go in the military. Don't want me. Found medical for psoriasis. Cheers for that.
Fucking hell.
Yep.
Really?
Yep. That was it. Bar on entry.
Is that
back
still
then.
the case now?
No. Hence why I ended up somewhere hot and sandy a few years later.
That?
But bar on entry, so I had to find something to do, and I found politics. So,
why politics?
I guess when I was away, I became a little bit of a very socially aware.
Oh, you studied it, obviously.
I'd read it, yeah. I'd done a bit of fundraising in Australia, so those charity muggers on the street.
What, for campaigns?
Yeah, for different. So Médecins Sans Frontières, Save the Children. I did a bit of fundraising for them.
Oh, I thought you meant fundraising for a political campaign.
No, like NGOs. I was proper right on.
I worked with MSF in Mozambique.
Massive. I know they've got a difficult relationship with the military, but massive respect.
Yeah. No, when I was with Team Rubicon, I worked with them. Not when I was
really?
Yeah.
Oh, mega.
Yeah, they let me in their wagon.
Huh.
They got stuck for 2 days. They didn't know. They were away for 4 days, mate. Like that. Anyway, go on.
They do now. But yeah, I guess I became really socially aware, and my ambition was to go and work in Africa with an NGO. That's what I wanted to do. So when I got back after a relationship breakdown, someone I've been travelling with, I was like, shit, what do I do? And so I was looking for work, political work, because I thought that's social conscience. And in the same, I'd applied for a job with the Conservatives and the Lib Dems in the same week. I literally had no.
What the job was?
So the one in the Lib Dems, and I told this to the Lib Dems the other week, it was in the international office, and then with the Conservatives, it was to start an apprenticeship as a constituency campaigner, running the office of a member of Parliament. Literally had no ideological. In fact, when I went for the interview with the Conservatives, I literally joined the party the day before because Scott thought it'd look good on the application. Yeah. And when I tipped up, everyone was a political geek. They'd worked. There were councillors. I had no experience apart from these transferable skills from the military and being a holiday rep, funny enough, which they liked. Maybe not some of the bits of Magaluf. But so long story short, I started on this path of working for a member of Parliament and running elections and running the constituency operation for an MP. And in fact, my first election campaign that I ran, I had 37 candidates. And I realised I had no experience again, but I was good at it because of kind of some of the skills that you and I have got from military life. In fact, the best candidate that I had in that local government election was an ex-squaddy, was a Royal Signals corporal. And we were told he wasn't going to win that seat, but we did, because he worked bloody hard and he had those skills. So that was kind of the early days of that realisation that there are transferable skills in civilian life from our backgrounds, but also specifically in public life, public roles, whether it's local government or members of parliament, or operationally, like I did. It was an operational role behind the scenes. So that was really where the penny started to drop. So I moved around in that role in different parts of the country, including here in London, and I thought Herrick had happened. I'd lost a mate on Telek, a schoolmate, Tom Tanswell, and then a really good friend of mine, a Gurkhas officer that I grew up with, Lee Roberts, got badly blown up in on Herrick. Thankfully he's fully recovered now, family, great friends still. And I just had this thing that was this itch that my military career hadn't panned out. I had to ask again. By that stage, I was 28, I think, 29. So my local TA, as it still was back then, was the Ink Corps. So I went knocking on the door. Expectation down here. So I thought I'm going to fail the medical. Guess what? The rules had changed. Before I know it, I'm at Purbright. Guess who's my section commander? Chris Shirley.
Shaka for Chris.
Yeah, Shaka for Chris. So Chris back then was as we know, doing amazing things and recovering from his own challenges at the moment. But at the time was a full screw in the RMP before joining the Royal Marines. And I got best recruit, standard. I was the only Ink Corps bloke in my platoon. I was the only Ink Corps bloke in my platoon, so I had that horrible green coloured beret that we have. Stood out like a sore thumb. And I just realised that, hang on a minute, I've got a taste for this again. I'm back in the club. And there was this thing called a full-time reserve service. A good mate of mine, Pete Dollamore, came and did a presentation about the Arabic course. So I thought, I want some of that. I want to go and learn Arabic. That looks Gucci. So I applied for that to do a 2.5-year FTRS contract. Of course, I got Pashto, didn't I? I didn't get Arabic. They didn't give you a course you actually wanted to do.
You actually can use afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Something useful. And before you know it, there I am at the Defence School of Languages for 15 months.
Where is that?
It was at Beaconsfield, which was an amazing part of the world to live for 15 months.
Where's Beaconsfield?
It's in Buckinghamshire, fairly near High Wycombe.
Okay,
so put a load of squaddies, tri-service, rank range private soldier to major, basics like university in Rig, put them in one of the most affluent parts of the world and give them loads of time on their hands outside of study. They're not fizzing, you're out on the town. It was a brilliant social part of the world. But at the end of that course, at the end of Pashto, you're only going, there's 1 or 2 jobs that you're going to. And the bit that I got was working with Military Stabilisation Support Group, as it was known back then, which has now been morphed into 77 Brigade. So I was going to be working on the ground as a linguist, doing basic reconstruction, compensation from damages, like when people's compounds were accidentally damaged in contacts, working with schools, local government. So that was my tour, and I was guess who I was attached to.
What year was it?
Herrick 15, Lashkar West.
15? 15? PWRR?
Yeah. 1 PWRR. So I got to Bastion, and there on the flight line was a guy I was a private soldier with, is now the CSM. I was there as a Lance Jack. And he came up and gave me a hug in front of the guys, which I thought was absolutely mega. And there was all these characters that I was in Belfast with. There we were, working in the same PB. But it was part of the QRH battle group, so there were elements of QRH. There were also the lads from the main holding company was Support Company of 1 Yorks, who completely took me in You know, they were a great bunch of lads. If you weren't on patrol or working, then you were chucking a rugby ball around.
Yorks. Yeah, you reminded me there. A couple of podcasts ago with Johnny Mercer, Johnny MH, Johnny Morton.
I think I'm the third Johnny to appear on this podcast.
Possibly, yeah. Oh, yeah, you are, yeah. So Johnny MH, I referenced the fact that when I went there on the third tour on Herrick 13, we took over from the Anglians. It was not. It was
Yorks.
It was the Yorks.
Yeah.
Because someone beasted me on
On social media.
Yeah. No, in fact, text me. Say, you fucking
really?
idiot. Listen to Parker. You fucking idiots. One Yorks. Anyway, so it was Yorks, not Anglians. Like, but
Yorks.
Yeah, sorry.
But because I was this weird like reservist that had worked in politics, a bit older, had this skill, this language, which, again, you know, they teach you BBC Pashto. So you're talking like
BBC.
Well, you're talking like basically the Pashtun equivalent of a public schoolboy, but you're there talking to the Glaswegian accent equivalent of a Helmandi Pashto. So I literally, my first job was to go and buy sheep for an Eid present. So I'm stood in the middle of this field in Helmand talking to a toothless farmer. Literally, it was like, you know, can you guess what it is yet? Sort of like charades, 2 syllables. Did the job though, but it was hilarious. So wherever I went, I took this little notepad, and this phrase "da sashide" means what is that thing? Literally, I was pointing at everything, and it filled up this vocab book of Helmandi.
Da sashide.
Yeah, da sashide.
Da sashide.
What is that thing? And so by the end of it, when you actually become useful, so I guess I was probably about 2 months in. I then started to diversify. The guy I was working with got injured on R&R. So I was on my own, and I was just bored. The drawdown was happening in terms of the MSS teamwork that was happening was not as frequent. So you weren't going out there rebuilding wells, and there was a big effort on rebuilding police stations. But I was handing compounds over, so I was basically getting sort of some interesting farmers who had a tiny little compound that was a CP and paying out compensation because obviously we'd had their compound for a few years. So understanding that Afghans, give them an inch, I love them dearly, but we'll take a mile when it comes to things like how many trees were in this compound. There were 1,000, and you're talking about. Of course there were, mate. Yeah, I mean, it's 10 metres square. How'd you get 1,000 trees in here?
That's Middle Eastern culture.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Culture.
It's funny. Yeah. It's funny, but then you're adding value because you know the language, right? Yeah. So you can laugh it off and work it out. But then I started doing a bit of police advisory. So working, I think it was 4 Scots, 3 or 4 Scots, can't remember. But I spent 3 weeks working around there, and by that stage, I understood the humour. I could rebuild a rapport, and I was becoming useful. That was at a time of heightened tensions with the Afghans. So the green on blue stuff. So I actually felt that I was adding value because I knew I was making it safer. And towards the end, we had a deliberate op. Again, working with the AMP, partnering with the Afghan National Police. I then went and worked with the beginning of this conversation, but the interrogators, just to, doing some basic interpreting there. So I had a really varied tour, and because I was just put my hand up, I was a bit older, it was a reservist, so had something else from outside of life, and I was really proud that I got a Commander Land Forces commendation at the end of that tour.
Congratulations.
So yeah, there was, and then that's it. Bang, Pottle, post operational tour leave, no resettlement as a reservist. I'd just spent 2.5 years of my life outside of my civilian career. My job wasn't held because I'd left to go and deploy, and then you have to go and start again. So I went back into politics.
You don't have the option to join up.
I did kind of toy with the idea. I think for family reasons at a time, I was like, do I really want to start again? I think I was 32 then. I was 32, Lance Jack at 32.
Yeah.
I saw, actually, I've had a really good, I've come back, I've had a good tour. So I went back to politics. Working for someone at the time that was a cabinet minister. Going back to what I did, but you know what? I was so much better at my job.
Why is that?
Well, obviously we were fighting a counterinsurgency, and when you're working in politics on the ground, it's a counterinsurgency. You have to do key leader engagement. You have to identify, the threat. You have to identify different human terrain within the environment. And so all those skills, obviously not in an aggressive way, but all those skills and that empathy and the ability to understand people was everything that I'd learned in Afghanistan. And I just found myself, I literally did human terrain analysis mapping of the constituency that I was working in. And I was really effective in terms of the output of being good at my job. And again, that penny started to drop even louder about the transferable skills of the military and politics. So I just started to rethink about why aren't more military involved in public life? Literally post-war Britain was rebuilt by the veteran community physically. And I just found at that time that there was some rebuilding to be done here in our communities. So I then went to work at the MOD for 3 years, working on transition. So I ran a relationship management team working with big business.
What do you mean working on transition?
So building relationships around the Armed Forces Covenant, working with big organisations like Barclays and Deloitte and Tesco and all those kind of big businesses in order to build a programme of change within organisations. So organisations could tap into the transferable skills for the mutual benefit of veterans, reservists, spouses, cadet force, adult volunteers. So I spent 3 years running the relationship management team, which was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. Just seeing how far the business community had come in terms of responding to the talents of the military community. Just seeing some of the numbers, seeing some of, you could see it, literally the amount of reservists businesses were hiring. And that was the main effort at the time, was the relationship with the reservist community. And business just got it. Yes, there's still some work to be done. Of course there is around transition. But in terms of the response from the business community, they're absolutely lapping up veterans. I'm talking about the big companies here. We need to give more support to SMEs. Indeed, there are loads of small, medium enterprises that are doing that. But for me, I was like, right, hang on a minute. There's some transferable skills of veterans in politics. I've proven that. I've seen it with some, the veteran politicians in Parliament. There are some massive key skills for the future from the business community, and Deloitte did a report on it called Veterans Work, where they actually mapped this out. So I thought, well, hang on a minute, why is no one doing this in politics? I knew from my own experience that it was bloody hard to get people to stand up in their communities to become councillors. You tend to get the same kind of people, lots of husband and wife teams, retired people that just happen to know someone. And the bar, I have to say, there are some good councillors out there across this country, of which there are 20,000 local government councillors across the UK. But by and large, from what I'd seen in the military, there's no comparison.
Well, but the problem is with it is that people don't... and I was guilty of this in the past. Until the last few years, I've become more interested in politics, just generally, because I didn't understand it and because I'm getting an old fucker like yourself. No offense. Is that people don't understand the way that structure is and where, like anything really, when you get out and you're sort of a bit naive in terms of how commerce works, corporate world works, and just because a company is just because Facebook is a social media company doesn't mean it hasn't got a HR position in it, or project manager position, or facilities manager position. It's just a tech company, but it's got all these positions, and you can, it's the same with it's the same with politics, that naivety with it, but also it's perceived, it may be perceived as well as like not a dishonest thing, but just there's so much stigma around it. You sort of brought up to either love a party or hate another or both, right? But I mean, it really pricked my ears up there when you were talking about the human terrain mapping and that campaign stuff. It really is a case of you're on shore. This is heart. You're talking hearts and minds. What you're talking about is hearts and minds, right? when you're on tour, you have an area of operations, and you need to achieve an impact in that area of operations, and that is to, in the case of Helmand, it's to take control of that area, keep the Taliban out, so you can impose your influence on it, whatever that may be. Help the people on their feet. Exactly the same politics.
Sounds exactly like
it's
any
exactly the
election
same
campaign.
politics, except the impact is different. The influence is different. You have to treat each area with a different thing. It takes that hearts and minds awareness. You don't go knocking on, like, you can go knock in one area on the door, exactly you were doing Helmand. You got to go do an op in one area, but it's a Taliban stronghold.
Yeah, you'd understand.
You're going into that area and you're speaking to people a little bit differently than you would in other areas.
Exactly.
It's the same. I know. It's
exactly
the same thing. What's interested me recently is becoming aware of just how many veterans there are in it. There aren't loads, right? But
no.
I've obviously had Jonny Mercer on the podcast. I had the good fortune the other day to meet with Dan Jarvis.
Yep.
Guess who Dan Jarvis, ex-Power
Yep.
Guess who Dan Jarvis is, one of Dan Jarvis's offices, one of his right-hand men. A fucking another Power lad.
Yeah.
A ranker called...
Richard.
What's his surname? He won't mind. Richard. Hey, Richard.
Yeah.
A Power lad, right? And the thing is, and people I think, well, Dan has got him there because it's muckers, yeah. Well, that is not a big element.
He's there
it's
on
very
merit.
small. Exactly, mate. Because what is one big thing that is missing in politics in general? Trust.
Yep.
Who do you know you can trust?
Values and trust.
Get a veteran next year. Because one, you ask them to go and do something, they're going to fucking do it. And two, you can trust them.
Yep.
Like, in general, sorry, civilians lose him. In general, if you're military, it's your own. If you're part of one tribe, you tend to trust your own tribe more than others. Same with the military, same with any background. That's what it is. He's got a Power Edge lad working for him, Dan Jarvis, and I thought it was amazing. And when I went and met with him, it was the same when I met with Jonny on air and off air. It was just so refreshing, because they just fucking open.
And do you not think the public is crying out for that?
Absolutely.
And this is not a party political point.
I have people that don't beat you around the bush.
No, I have a background with one particular party, but I'm very passionate about sorting out our politics. And again, this is not an officer sport. I'm a bloke that started off as a private soldier in PWRR. I'm a senior NCO in the Inc Corps Reserves, still serving just about, though I'm on a Fablon Biff jet at the moment, due to the accident. But this is not an officer sport. So on the last Parliament, there were about 51 members of Parliament with military experience, but that ranged from like 2 weeks in the TA, right up to full careers like Colonel Bob Stewart, for example.
Well, you had that bluffer who said she passed SAS selection, didn't you?
Oh God, yeah. Let's not talk about her.
Okay, go on.
But there are loads. The transferable skills and values of veterans. So light in business, transferable skills, check. But then if you then put that in politics, as I've experienced myself and as I've witnessed, you then have this other layer, which is the values and standards, right? And that is the bit. That's the golden nugget that we need in our politics. So that's precisely why I set up Campaign Force. So Campaign Force is the only organisation, non-party political, we're a community interest company, and it's set up to inspire, train and coach veterans to stand up and serve again in politics. So I started up this year because everything I'd seen, everything I experienced, I've got a decade of experience working in politics. I've got muckers that are veterans or reservists working in politics as well. So I've got this network. I know cross-party. So obviously Jonny I know personally, and Dan Jarvis's team. I've been to see Richard and the guys there, and they're very supportive. And I've been to see the chief exec of the Lib Dems, former Minister of the Armed Forces, even the SNP have been out and reached out to me. So I'm a non-party political organisation. I've been to both Labour and Conservative conference this year. In fact, at the Labour conference, I had the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence. She was there. Near Griffith.
Oh yeah.
And she and I had Labour MPs who basically said in the public room, look, Jonny's actually been responsible for defeating a lot of our colleagues in his previous career. So the fact that I was there was literally my tanks on the lawn to say that I believe in the power of the values and the transferable skills of the veterans community, and it transcends politics.
How was it received?
Really well. In fact, I didn't know this though until I delivered my first course.
In both? Oh, right.
So when I mean, it's all very well and good me saying this and this theory, but until you actually test it on the ground, you just don't know. So in April of this year, our good friend Andy Mylop at Facebook
Shout out to Andy.
Big shout out to Andy.
I love that bloke, mate. Mega bloke.
Nicest bloke in NATO.
Mega bloke.
He
doesn't age either.
I know.
What
remarkable.
Is going on, mate?
It's not bad for 70, is he? It's unbelievable. But so Andy squared me away with some training space at Facebook, and there I was. I designed a course, and do you know what you were saying about? So, for example, the myths of veterans thinking, "Oh, I can't go into that industry." I'd seen that, particularly in financial services, and I nicked the idea. So I created an insight event called Stand Up and Serve Again, Political Insight Day. And I was there in order to share the secrets of politics. So telling veterans about what's the structure of local government, what are the opportunities, all the different ways that you can serve again in public life. It's not just about Parliament. There are 20,000 local government councils across the UK. Things like Police and Crime Commissioner, County Council, Assemblies, Welsh Assembly, Scottish Parliament, so many opportunities. So it's basically laying out the landscape, sharing the secret, talking about the skills, making the veterans understand that actually they work it out themselves. They've got the skills that are completely compatible. And we get them to answer that question themselves pretty much. They work it out. And then me and my team, most of us are veterans or reservists, we then share the secrets from decades of experience of working behind the scenes in politics. At the last event, Jonny came along to spin some dits about his journey from army officer to Parliament, and that was a really good insight. And and that is when I knew we were onto something. And so the reason why I say that is that I think you can always judge a good course by how many people go to the pub afterwards. You know, when people just like disappear, right? Great, course is over.
Yeah. I think about that.
Right, who wants to go to the pub, right? And everyone came to the pub.
It could be a super shit course, mate.
I need a pint. That was so bad. So anyway, they all came to the pub, and it's just on Euston Road, opposite Facebook. And I sat there after not having much sleep the night before, because I thought, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Self-doubt, imposter syndrome, all of those things. And we delivered this kick-ass course, as I felt by the end of it. I didn't feel it at the beginning. And I stood there, and there were two guys. There was a guy called Kyle, who's ex-Rifles, originally from Canada. I think he one tour of Telic, two of Herrick, again, a Tom. And then Stephen, ex-Incorps, again, recent tour of Afghanistan, now a school teacher. You had Kyle, was working in the city, both absolutely kicking ass in their civilian life. Stephen has identified himself as a Conservative. We don't get involved in that. They sort of self-identify. If they do need any help, then we can make introductions. And Kyle would identify himself as Labour, okay, during the day. And there they were in the pub, right? But you know what? None of that mattered, because the commonality they had was the commonality of service. It was like a human bridge across what might be seen as the divide. Their values, the standards, to the extent where they both won't mind me saying this, on social media, I've seen them share their good news stories about their achievements in the political.
Even though they're part of different parties.
Exactly. So Stephen, for example, passed the Parliamentary Assessment Board. Kyle, again through our help, had actually become is on the National Committee of the Labour Friends of the Armed Forces from our intervention. So we're seeing that happen, them actually going on to get involved in politics, thanks to Campaign Force. But more importantly, that human bridge is there because of that shared service and shared values. So I immediately thought there, sat in the pub, just going, if we can bottle this, and if we can put that in all of our communities across the UK, then our communities are going to be so much better. Our politics is going to be so much better. And that's what's really firing me up about Campaign Force, because I think it's got so much potential. It's early days. We've run another workshop since. Rank range, private soldier to brigadier. I had 2 MBEs in the room and 1 OBE. And the feedback we got from them is that no one's ever asked us before.
Asked what?
To serve again.
Oh.
But we are now. And that's completely why. That's why I'm doing Campaign Force.
So Campaign Force is a training organisation. But is it also a referral organisation for work?
So, in terms of referrals, we don't get involved in the party political stuff. we're politically agnostic, which might sound a bit weird.
But can parties come to you and say, look, we're looking for people?
I'm having conversations with the parties. So if we can be part of the triage or the feeder, if they say, oh, who, because it's a closed shop. If any of my friends, not just military ones, say to me, I really want to get involved in politics, where do I start? We can help them start with that. We can make the introductions. We can open the door. But we're certainly never going to say, do you know what? Hugh, you look like you could be XYZ party. We're not going to go down that road. That's their bag. People work them. Some people haven't got a clue, and that's fine. But if they want to go and speak to all the parties, we'll set up those conversations because we've got that network. Predominantly, where our sweet spot is about sharing the knowledge. So we basically get them in at the top of the hopper, get them along to our Insight event. They may then never do anything about it. Our conversion rate is about 12 people come, 4 people then go on to do some kind of activism straight away. Some might sit on it and say, do you know what, I'll get involved in politics.
What do you mean
later
activism?
on. So go out knocking on doors, applying to be a councillor, doing their parliamentary assessment board, or getting involved as a volunteer.
Parliamentary assessment board, go on.
Basically, it's like the Army Officer Selection Board and the other single service equivalents for MPs. So they go and do an assessment day on it. So
and if they're going to put themselves forward for election, like a local election or something.
Then there's like a really tiny version of that at local elections.
Because you got basically you got your representatives of the party, yeah. So councillors, MPs, and then but in the background you got all that. You got all the support,
operational kind of professionals, and there's a huge skill gap there as well, by the way.
So go on.
So basically we get them in the hopper, make them interested. So for next year, this is our first year, we've run 2 courses. Next year, it's about bringing them on that journey. So we're going to give them some skills about public speaking, media training. If they decided that they come on our course, that they were like, do you know, I don't want to be an MP, but I fancy being a councillor, then we'll give them specific training in local government. If they want to be an MP and they want some coaching to do the relevant, specific, whatever party they're going for, or none. They might want to be an independent. We'll give them coaching about how to do that next level.
Does each party have their own different training for the MP for their...
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's the joy of our organisation, is that the people that deliver the training are from all the parties. So we know, we have the knowledge of the selection for all the different parties because we're politically agnostic. So therefore, we can give the specific advice depending on the background of our team. So I've got about 5 people that associates to campaign for us that help deliver my training.
So give me an example of someone who's come through.
Yeah,
someone who's come through campaign force and now gone on to get a role with a party. Can you? What are they going to do?
What's the journey look like? Pretty much.
A real example.
So bear in mind, we started in April.
Yeah.
April this year.
Yeah.
So since April, the first course, one of my guys came along. He'd stood for a local election at the very lowest level, which is parish council, which is, basically deals with dog poo bins and trees without kind of belittling it, but it's not a great deal of
village
experience.
Stuff, right?
Village stuff, very local, very local. It's important, but very local. Very inexperienced. He's gone on to become...
How old is he?
He's about... I'm going to get it wrong now, aren't I, mate, if you're listening.
Roughly.
He's mid-30s.
Okay.
Yeah. He's gone on and he's become a senior part of the management team of his local political party.
Okay. So he's got above parish.
Yeah, well, he's actually part of the voluntary system. So the local party, it's like the localised version of the national party.
Yeah.
He's now part of the management team. He's gone on from that. I've seen him really embracing campaigning, local issues, really engaging with social media politically. He's gone on and applied because he wants to be an MP. So we've helped him, coached him with his CV. Bearing in mind, I've sat on the other side and received these CVs. I know, both in terms of civilian skills and the military skills.
What's one?
A bit like, when you help your muckers out who are going to get a job in industry and you're like, put in, platoon sergeant, commanded 30 blokes. You need to make that sound a little bit more relevant, but still military. So I do that.
And not bullshit.
And not bullshit, yeah. I had a budget of 30 million. Yeah, sure you did, big lad. So basically, it's helping them with that CV translation. So when they do their application form. giving them some coaching and advice. One-to-one coaching. So that's the final bit of the model. We've got Inspire at the top. Come along to our workshop. We've got coaching. So that kind of training. So coming on to do further training that we're launching next year. And the last bit, which I've kind of fast forward to already with individual relationships that I've built, is giving that advice, CV advice, interview advice. And this individual went and actually applied for a parliamentary seat. He was that good. He was fast-tracked to apply for the seat without even having done the initial selection board. He was invited to apply.
What was it about it that was good? What was it about him that made it stand out?
Not just the military skills. It's a large part of it. So, strategic planning, communication, values, standards, politics it needs it at the moment. It really needs it. So it's like the differentiator. But the guy also had a really good civilian career as well. So it was a fine balance of applying, not majoring too much on one and on the other. But the bit that made him stood out from every other candidate was that military bit. That was that differentiating factor. So give him advice on how to articulate the military persona. Because, it can, because of some of the myths about the veteran community, it can come across the wrong way unless, and the varying roles of our armed forces. It's about making sure that comes across as well. But it certainly is a game changer in terms of what makes people stand out when they're applying.
What kind of, an entry level, what kind of salary are you looking at?
So we talk about this on our workshops as well.
It's going to change. It'll change from role to role. But...
So we talk about this on our workshops. So there is a cost to politics. In a local government, so if you were... And I've got a comment to make about local government as well, in terms of resettlement. But if you're in local government, you get an allowance. It's not a salary. So it's a bit like... I can only equate it to being in the reserves in terms of time commitment. But you are a local representative in your community and you get between £6,000 and £8,000 depending where you are in the country. If you're a cabinet member, and it depends on what system they have in local government, so you might be head of housing, for example, you get extra pay because you've got extra responsibilities.
So you basically claim back on that.
Yeah, you don't. It shouldn't cost you anything. You get your expenses back, and you get an allowance on top of the time in order to compensate the time that you put into your public service.
So you'd be looking at you need a second.
You do need a career. Job. Yeah, it's like a supplement to it. Yeah, this is why there's an abundance of retirees that are involved in politics. But it is compatible.
Well, it could be an amputee with a war pension.
Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Works out really well and bear in mind, we do not have a wounded, injured and sick Member of Parliament at the moment.
Or anyone with a war pension. Not amputee.
Yeah.
We don't have what?
A wounded, injured and sick Member of Parliament. We don't have a Member of Parliament from the Gurkha or Fijian community that you and I have all served alongside. We don't currently have a female veteran Member of Parliament. Penny Mordaunt is a reservist.
I didn't know that. I didn't know
we don't have a woman. I mean, a third of Parliament's women. So where Campaign Force can help, and that's kind of part of our objectives, and we're not putting any figures on this, is to help diversify politics in terms of the balance, gender balance, because you and I have served along some absolutely epic women, and we need to be asking women to stand too. So there's a diversity issue that we can change. At my last workshop, the average age was 37, and this was a room that included a brigadier in the room. So, yeah, the average age of the attendees. So by the time, they will be flying, absolutely flying, mate. So, but in terms of the average age of all of the attendees, the average age of an MP in the last Parliament was 51, I think. So we can help bring the age down, but with people that have got an immense amount of experience from the formative years of our lives, and those skills and those values. But when it comes to local government, which is the place that I really want to have an impact, where there are 20,000 vacancies over a 4-year period, because there's elections every year in local government.
Local government.
Yeah. If you can imagine, if you become elected as a local councillor, you're more likely, because you've invested in the community, to stay and resettle in that community with your family. Because you've invested because it's a 4-year term, there's bigger things at stake. You've understood the community better. You're contributing to your community. You're helping your community. And you've got a better relationship than a lot of people in your community. And likewise, the community is invested in you because they've seen you, and I'd hope people would declare their military persona when they're going up for election. But that kind of confidence that the community have invested in you too. So I actually think this will help with the resettlement offer too.
We're taking a chill pill moment. We've had technical issue again. Right. Cracking. So if the camera angles change, we have a technical issue with the fucking camera and the audio. Right, to go back over my last question. What are we talking? So entry level local government that people can expect. So a veteran goes in and goes, I want to be part of a local party or local
Or independent.
Yeah. What can I expect to earn?
So
how does it work?
It's certainly something we cover in our workshop.
I know, because you told me twice already. But we didn't record it.
Well, yeah, we go into some considerable detail for the third time in our workshop. But no, actually, in all seriousness, at local government level, you don't get a salary, you get what's known as an allowance. So it's about between 6 to 8 grand. And the way that I can sort of communicate this to the military community, it's a little bit like being a reservist. So that spare time that you take in order to be a reservist is the spare time that you'll take to be a counsellor. And depends where you are in the country, but yeah, about 6 to 8 grand. If you've got extra responsibility, so some local government councils will operate like a cabinet system, so a bit like in government as a cabinet. At local level, you'll have the cabinet member for housing, for example, or the leader of the council.
Do you get elected to those? So it's like volunteer or what?
No. So in the same way the government doesn't get elected into cabinet, once you become elected as a councillor, yes, of course you need to get elected as a base level councillor, but whoever makes up the government, local government through majority, they will then form a local government. And depends on the system they operate. A lot have what's known as a cabinet system. So it's basically like a mini version of national government, each with responsibilities. So if you have a responsibility, like you are the leader, you're going to be spending more time, so more responsibility. So of course you're going to get a higher degree of salary on top of that.
If they don't have a cabinet system, what do they have?
They have a committee system. So basically, does what it says on the tin. And pretty much you'll have lots of committees for different responsibilities that then report into full council. Full council is a bit like Parliament.
How does each council decide what system they have?
They can have local government reform.
Just the way it's been. Okay.
There's certain bits of legislation that apply to this. So, for example, where I live, we're changing our system from the boroughs and the districts and the county council, which is the next tier. We're combining the two into what's known as a unitary authority. So it takes on 2 different councils and wraps it into one. In terms of those efficiencies of savings, obviously not duplication of effort, and it's a bigger, more strategic body. So actually, when I speak to people on our workshops and they say, "Oh, I want to be an MP, I want to affect change," great, we'll help you with that. But in some ways, you can actually have more responsibility and more hands-on budget in local government, because unless you are in government at national level or working as a minister, having access to budget, if you're just an MP, a backbencher, arguably someone working at county council, for example, or unitary, is going to have closer and influence change.
They're closer to the centre.
Exactly, they're closer to affecting real change. And more importantly, seeing it, because you live in that community too, right? You represent that community as a councillor in the first place, but then for the wider community in terms of your responsibility. So I think that's a really exciting part of local government and a really good place for veterans to use their skills, their ability, their strategic planning, their communication, their problem solving, and dependent on obviously your trade and what arm or service that you've been in, those extra skills you'll have from your trade, hugely transferable into local government.
It can be a pretty rapid transition in, can't it? Like James Glancy came on.
Oh yeah.
James Glancy came on. He was our 50th. Only you could have that sport. My 50th episode was going to be I wanted someone significant on, which isn't James Glancy, sorry Jim. No, but someone like I think I had my dad scheduled to come on. And my dad had been. He was like, I'm in an hour coming on. He's a recovering alcoholic, and it's like I'm trying to get on to talk about his journey.
Yeah.
And anyway, the way it worked out, Jim ended up being number 50. I had a cancellation. Jim was number 50. And then within a matter of weeks of Jim being on, I mean, he's a conservationist, environmentalist,
TV personality, adventurer,
within a matter of weeks of him coming on, he was a Brexit Party
MEP. Yeah,
he was a Brexit Party and a candidate MEP.
I've worked for
and
MEPs
then he won
as well. And he won. Yeah,
he's an MEP now. Right, he came back on that like 4 episodes. What the fuck happened there? And it was he'd been at some event. Or he says that in the podcast. It's like that. It can be really quick in, if you. But as you say,
the thing I liked about that journey is that it surprised a lot of people. I think. James, looking at his background and things, and that's what I'm finding in politics in general is that the more and more people I speak to, in terms of we don't get involved in the party political piece, but obviously we've got the network there. But it really does go against convention. People are like, well, actually, I want to do this, I want to do that. You're like, oh wow, that's surprising. You'll get. I spoke to one guy who's got an MBE. He's full career. He's now in the reserves. A major in the reserves, had a full, LE commissioned, epic bloke. I think he's a special constable as well. And this guy, he was like, I might think about parish council kind of thing. I'm like, no, you've got to raise the bar. The amount of skills and experience you've got, you'd be an epic police and crime commissioner, for example. And those guys have budget and responsibility.
So you could go in as a commissioner.
Yep.
And have nothing to do with being a counsellor and all that.
Yep.
Just going
straight in as police and crime commissioner.
Right. This is the side I don't understand. So explain. Just give me. So you got police and crime commissioner. You got local counsellor. And to me, those are public facing positions.
Yeah.
Right. They're not ops. Public facing positions. So what other public facing positions are there in local government?
So from the bottom, parish council. That's your dog poo, bins, and trees. So quite low level village kind of affairs. Yeah. And they tend actually to be non-party political. People tend to get co-opted, sometimes as elections. Next rung up the ladder is district or borough council. So these are people that have allowances, full-on election, party politics tends to get involved. Independents do get elected as well at that level.
At that level, do you not have like a crime and police commissioner there?
I'll come on to that because that's a little bit higher up.
Yeah.
Next level up, you tend to have either what's known as a unitary authority or a county council. So they tend to be more strategic. So they get involved in things like police and fire authority. They'll have a link in to the police crime commissioner, for example. Your schooling, school places, your highways, real punchy strategic infrastructure. They'll be your county council unitary level.
I'm such an idiot.
Because
I know, because I was thinking, mate, until this moment, I've never thought, well, borough council and council, different things, just different names. So, but now it's dawned on me. Such an idiot. Colchester Borough Council, Chelmsford Borough Council. Yeah. Obviously, Colchester. I was going to say raised there. Then I was based in Colchester Borough Council, Chelmsford Borough Council. The overarching is Essex County Council.
Yep.
Right, got you.
And closely, kind of at that level. Do you know what this actually demonstrates? That people like you, working in business, absolutely, kicking ass in those areas, that level of understanding, we've got a job to do, and that's not your fault. That's a lot of people's fault, and that's why I want to have an effect with Campaign Force, because this is our community, and I'm like, this community's got loads of potential, and we need to unlock that potential. First thing we need to do is share the secret.
Question for you. So why are you having to do it? Why do the? It's good that you do it, but why is it not in a council's interest, be it borough or county? Why is it not in their interest to make the public more aware of how they work, the structure they are, and what's available in terms of work and influence?
So there are campaigns that have an outreach. So there are sort of engagement, getting more women in politics, for example. So that there are ways, there are examples that are inspiring me to do this. So it's not necessarily the responsibility. I just don't think they've woken up to the potential. I think business, I use that as an example all the time because that's what I know from my time at MOD, from what I experienced on a day-to-day basis. Really, business woke up and they've seen a shift away from veterans being pushed into roles, pushed into traditional roles. But now business is pulling them in because they've woken up to the potential and the bottom line, the effect on the bottom line of having veterans in your business. And I think that politics needs to go on a similar journey. It was post-war Britain, and I've been doing some historical research. I did a campaign on there were 22 members of Parliament that died in World War One, and countless lords and sons of.
Oh, really?
The baby of the House of Commons, so the youngest MP, was actually killed in World War One. There were two brothers that were MPs that were part of three brothers that were killed in World War One. So because the armed forces was bigger, because it was more interwoven with everyday life and communities, there was that realisation and understanding. We've had to campaign for business to wake up to that, and we've come a long way. This is public life is the next kind of effort, as it were. Post-war Britain, everyone came home. They literally had to tap into those skills, those values, those talents to physically rebuild Britain. Now, you might want to say that we need to rebuild Britain politically or culturally or socially. Don't know, discuss. But there are fewer of us, so it's even harder to have that relationship between the public and the armed forces. So I think this will help that, because political figures are quite public in communities, whether it's your local councillor or member of parliament. So the more and more we can do of this nature, then the better it will be for our communities in terms of that visibility with smaller numbers in our communities.
Very good. How much is it to go on your workshops, insight workshops?
At the moment, a tenner.
Campaign for?
That's all we're charging, a tenner. I learned very quickly
I was
that...
not expecting a tenner.
Well,
I was expecting a lot more.
Well, yeah, I've done some market research, and you're probably talking between £100 and £200 for these kind of courses. My team have decades of experience. We're giving you not just political skills, but actually some good life skills.
You're just breaking even with that.
It's basically, I was very lucky. I received a seed fund from a benefactor who believed in what I was doing. Happens to be a Royal Navy reservist as well. Happens to be really successful in business. So I met him in the early days, about a year and a half ago, and said, I've got this idea. He's like, what do you need? So he gave me a small sum of money to get this started. Where I'm at the moment in terms of sustainability for 2020, we're looking at fundraising through political philanthropy. The political donation market is worth about 58 million a year. So I'm looking at approaching people that are that way inclined. Also for business to engage with this, because I think there's a vested interest for business to have more veterans serving their communities, because a stronger and safer politics will mean a stronger and safer economy. So I'm hoping to work with business too. I've already had the support of Facebook, as discussed with our good mucker Andy, and Sage also provide me with some training space, real estate. So really generous. I'm also a mentee as part of the Heropreneurs mentorship scheme, which has been game changing.
Well done on that, mate. Well done.
It's been absolutely game changing. My mentor Simon is such an experienced businessman, former ex-army himself, so has that empathy, but immensely experienced in business. So I've had that wraparound support. So in terms of charging for the workshops, my long-term aim is to make that insight workshop free, so we can get those 15,000 service leavers engaged, get them in the hopper, get them to try before they buy. It might not be for everyone. Our conversion rate is about a third of people go on and engage with politics from there on in. If they then come onto the next level of the hopper, where we start training them specifically in different skills, so local government, public speaking, media training. I've engaged with a BBC journalist, former journalist, to look at media training. A friend of mine happens to also be a reservist, getting him to deliver some public speaking training. Then, of course, we're going to be charging for more for those workshops, because that's specialist advice. And then one-to-one engagement. So if you are going for parliamentary assessment to become a member of parliament, lean into our expertise and we can support you. Plenty of organisations do this anyway, but they're not veterans. They don't understand our language. They don't understand us necessarily. And we've got something a little bit different to add.
Mate, it's cool. I really admire what you're doing. I do, genuinely.
Thank you.
And I think if they'd been a bit younger, would have. I'd be currently going. I'm going to go and be the parish councillor.
Still time, mate. Still time.
I'm enjoying it, mate.
No, seriously though, I mean, this follows resettlement. So if your resettlement is first and foremost looking after your family. If you can't look after yourself, then you can't look after others.
Well, this is interesting about it. It's like politics can be very off-putting to people on a local level or on a national level, or on an international level. But when you're talking about having influence, being able to influence the things that impact you or you and your family, and being able to get remunerated for it, because look, you need money to survive. Then it's like a win-win. It's a win-win, and it's that purpose in there, there's a sense of value, and it's challenging.
We'll have to get you along to one of our workshops.
100%.
Come and have a look, because then you can come and find out, meet the team, mix with other veterans. And it's good fun, and it's no commitment. Come and have a look, and then next year. So if people are interested in engaging with Campaign Force, then do go on campaignforce.co.uk. There's in our contact drop down, you'll see a sign up for a newsletter. Don't worry, you won't get bombarded. Sign up, and you'll hear about next year's events. Really exciting. I'm just planning events across the UK for next year. We're looking at going to Edinburgh, Cardiff, in time, hopefully get across the waters to Northern Ireland as well, and across the rest of mainland UK. So watch this space. We've built something here. We're getting more support, more interest, and it's about branching outside of London, for example, and getting closer to communities where veterans can make a difference. And if you do follow us on social media platforms at Campaign Force UK, you'll get up-to-date information from us on a weekly basis. You can dip in, dip out as you want.
Perfect.
But before we go, I'm going to embarrass you. We know what we like. We love a challenge coin. Stand up, serve again. So just for all the work that you do, Hugh, with the veterans community and this podcast, and how you're really starting to change perceptions about the armed forces community and everything you do for us, I'd like to present you with a Campaign Force Stand Up, Serve Again challenge coin. On the back, it's got the Union Jack, the Houses of Parliament, and some MTP mixed in there. This is from Challenge Coins UK. Good bit of kit. Let's present you with that.
Very, very Ali, mate. Thank you very much. Question for you.
Aliness saves lives,
Aliness does save lives. It's a metal coin. It's very nice. It's pretty cool. I'll post this on social media. Have you enclosed this metal coin in a plastic steel case so I don't try and eat this?
Yeah. Power Reg.
Been an absolute pleasure,
Cheers,
Jonny.
Marco.
Cheers, mate. Good luck.